They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be accessing our fine program, we appreciate you taking some of your day to spend it with us. We are going to make it worth your while. And this week, I can promise that it's going to be fun. Coming up in the second hour, we're going around the NBA. We have a lot to talk about. There's some trades, some highlights and lowlights. And then while it is March Madness, Jose and myself have admittedly and tried to stay genuine. We don't know a lot about college basketball, a lot like many of you. We're not insiders, so we decided to celebrate March Madness because it is a fun time. And we announced this last week. We're going to do round one of our breakfast cereal brackets for the 2021 for our own 2021 March Madness. So we're going to go through round one. Round one is just going to be Jose and myself running through the first round quickly because it's a lot. It's 32 matchups. And so we're going to have, or 16 matchups, I guess, 32 teams. And next week, we're going to ask for your vote in the next round. In this, was that Sweet 16, I guess, right?
Yep.
And so that's coming up. And I am wildly excited. I don't even care if no one listens to the show. I mean, I do care, but I don't care because it's going to be fun. We're going to have fun anyway, but people listen. So you're going to have fun too. Coming up in a little bit, we have to go around the NFL. Free agency is alive and kicking. We actually have so many headlines that we have to run through all of them, and we're bringing back a sort of a segment we used during the football season just called the Extra Point, where we kind of give a 1 or 2 sentence synopsis of our feelings on each of these deals because there are quite a few of them. You can follow us along, by the way, on the iHeartRadio podcasting app or on Amazon Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening, you found us. Good job. So now, Jose, let's kick off the show. This week in sports, we have some bad news, some worse news, and some kind of, I'm not sure yet, news. So right out of the gate, LeBron James out indefinitely with a high ankle sprain. LaMelo Ball broke his wrist over the weekend. All right, let me ask you this. Out of those two injuries, which injury hurts their team the most? Because I'm not going to ask, obviously LaMelo and the Hornets are not they're probably not going to make the playoffs. LeBron is always, in perpetual championship contention. But as far as effect on the team, which of those two injuries do you think hurts their team most?
Well, it's easily LeBron James to me, just because they were already without Anthony Davis. Now, I know LaMelo Ball is going to be out for the rest of the year, but LeBron, the Lakers are going to have to try and tread water for the next month at least. And it's not as if they have a playoff spot all locked up. It's going to be a tough road. I think they only have a 6-game lead over the number 8 seed in the playoffs right now in the West. And the Western Conference is very, very competitive. And the Lakers are also, they're kind of in a win now mode. So as you alluded to, if the Charlotte Hornets, I think they're the number 8 seed right now. If the Charlotte Hornets don't make the playoffs this year, there's no real disappointment, right? No one was really expecting them to make the playoffs. If the Lakers somehow don't make the playoffs, that's a devastating result for the season. So it's going to be really, really tough. They're going to have to try and do something ahead of the upcoming March 25th trade deadline.
Bradley Beal. Go get him. I keep pushing it. Go get him.
I don't know if they have enough assets to go get him with all the
you give the Wizards whatever they want. Whatever they want. You give the Wizards part ownership in the Lakers. I don't care. Just do it. So here's another question though. And I was thinking about this more and more because I do agree with you. I think it is LeBron because if Anthony Davis was there, then I think it would be more LaMelo. Not that, Gordon Hayward's not exactly stellar, but yeah, the Hornets are 20-21 right now as it stands right this moment, and they're in the 8th seed. The Lakers are 28-15, so there is a little bit of wiggle room, but not much. They're it's close, and it's going to be a tight race down the finish. But here's the thought I had. LeBron being injured, we kind of saw this last year with the shutdown where everything shut down, and LeBron and Anthony Davis, who are, LeBron is an Iron Man, but he's also 36, 37 years old, playing 40 plus minutes a game. Anthony Davis is a great player when he's healthy. The problem is he's just never that healthy. Yeah. So, we saw sort of a almost a serendipitous moment for the Lakers last year because everybody got to be 100% going into the playoffs. And so I was thinking about it, and assuming that the Lakers can hold on enough to grab, say, the 8th seed, maybe the 7th seed, could this injury be a good thing long term for this season for LeBron and the Lakers?
I guess it's possible, but when they come back, they're going to have to still try and get in. Like, when do they come back? How healthy are they when they return? And then the road that you're going to have to go through. I know it's not it's not the biggest deal in the world right now with COVID and the arenas not being fully filled to capacity. So home court advantage is not what it was years ago. But to have to be the 8th seed or the 7th seed and go through all of the better teams in the Western Conference on the way to trying to get to a championship, that's just a tough road. I think it's just better for them it would be better for them to just have been healthy and be the number 1 seed. Because I think when they're fully healthy and everyone's there, they're the best team in the NBA, including the Nets. And now it's, when you have guys coming back from injury, you just don't know how healthy they are going to be. You expect LeBron James to be fine because he's LeBron James. But Anthony Davis, we've seen him try to come back a couple times this season. He'll have one good game, and then the next game he's out for a month. So it just, we don't really know what to expect from Anthony Davis when he comes back, especially with that type of injury.
Yeah, I think it could be good, probably more so for Anthony Davis, which is when he went down, LeBron playing, because LeBron's an Iron Man. He spends $1 million on his body a year. He's proven over and over, and the fact that he's been trying to, or it feels like he's been trying to go for the MVP this year to kind of wake up the rest of the league and say, hey guys, I'm still here, by the way. It seemed like it could have been a good thing. Without both of them, I think that the chances of the Lakers falling out of contention are significantly higher, obviously. So I don't know.
Come back to battling for a number 8 spot when they come back. It's just going to be tough.
Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully, LeBron will get his Wolverine-like healing and come back superhuman again. So, moving on, this week in sports, some other news in sports, well, sort of in sports and not in sports. Deshaun Watson, I don't want to get into sort of the nitty gritty of what the actual lawsuits are, but I think we're up to 13 lawsuits against Watson since last week. And there's an attorney that represents the women, this guy, Tony Busby. Yeah, he's filed 13 lawsuits against Watson since last week. And it feels like it's turning into like a Tiger Woods moment in a way, because I'll be honest, the first one I saw, and this was my whole thought process through this whole thing. So, you can say what you want about it, but, at first I thought it was just a money grab. The first person came out and was like, all right, well, the guy did sign for $140 million. There's going to be people that are around him that want a piece of that maybe don't deserve it. You look at lottery winners. That happens all the time. People come out of the woodwork to kind of try to grab them. But after the 9th person came out, it's like, okay, well, mate, this can't be a coincidence, and this is snowballing into something that's turning into, a dangerous situation. And the only thing that's confusing to me is that why they're all civil lawsuits and not criminal charges, which is a good thing for Watson, because if there were criminal charges, he could be facing not only NFL issues, but jail. He could be put into jail for quite a long time based on some of the details in these cases. And so I'm not sure what to take away from this other than it's not good. It's not good for anybody involved. It's not good for the Texans. It's not good for Deshaun Watson. It's not good for the women. They're the victims here, or allegedly they're the victims here. So I don't know. This is crazy.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. The first thing I had written down is this is not good. Up to 13. And I kind of had a similar thought process when it first happened. The first one, I was like, all right, it's the he said, she said, not necessarily like a money grab or anything. He came out with such a strong defense saying, was it me? I forget exactly what his words were, but
it's a complete denial. Yeah.
Yeah. Complete denial. And then next thing you know, 12 more women have come out, and now he's silent, which is, I don't think that's very good. maybe his lawyers are telling him to just shut up right now.
Probably, yeah.
Probably, and as far as why it's a civil versus legal, criminal, I had the same thought. I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea. But the more and more of these start piling up, the worse it's going to get. I don't want to make this comparison, but it kind of started making me feel a little bit like thinking about Bill Cosby, actually, where it was like
think about that, yeah,
60 women. Because at first it was like, oh, I'm not, no, and then it's like, oh, well, it's 10, now it's 20. It's just, look. Hopefully this is it, right? Not 13 is enough.
Well,
and
not to cut off, but according to ESPN.com, this guy, the lawyer for the women, Busby, said, and this quote, Busby also said Friday he has been contacted by, additional quotes, more than 10 additional women, unquote. So it's
and if you read some of these allegations, like I read one or two of them. I'm not going to sit here and say I read all 13.
Yeah.
If this stuff is true, and we're not going to get into the details here, but you just go ahead and read it yourself. But
yeah, you can find it.
If this stuff is true, I don't really know. I'm just speechless. I have no, like, he might end up being kicked out of the league. Like, that's
or worse,
or worse. But yeah, I'm just talking about from a sports standpoint. Yes, he'll go to jail, all this stuff. But from, like, maybe not going to jail, but because it's not criminal, as you said. But whatever it is, he'll have to pay a fine or whatever. Not a fine, a settlement or whatever. But this is not good. And yeah, there's just another way to say this is not good. We'll have to wait and see how it develops. But
the only thing that I thought, and again, this is full disclosure. I'm not saying this one way or the other. It's just a thought process that I had. I did find initially. I mean, now it seems less so, but initially I thought that the timing was a little strange because, there's this holdout. Deshaun Watson is publicly disgracing the Texans, saying that the organization is messed up and he doesn't want to play for them. And you see J.J. Watt leave, which is not a good sign either. And the Texans aren't even taking calls on Watson. So it felt like people were on Watson's side for a while. And then all of a sudden these allegations start coming out. The timing seemed coincidental to me.
Yeah.
At first. Too. And I don't feel quite the same about that now, but that was the one thing that I felt like I was reserving judgment for that because it felt like at any point they could be like, it was going to just go away completely. But
it just seems unlikely at this point. How is it going to go away?
Obviously it's not the case. Absolutely. But we'll see. I mean, we'll stay tuned because this is turning into something that I don't think anybody saw coming. Keeping it moving around this week in sports. The Seahawks, speaking of quarterbacks that were not on the trading block, Seahawks declined a Bears trade offer for Russell Wilson, which included 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starters. Now, also related to that, Andy Dalton was signed and is now slated to be the Bears starter in 2021. So, this is crazy. The Seahawks are crazy. You should take that. They should have taken that and run with it. Russell Wilson's going to be 33 years old. I mean, that's Andy Dalton. That's all I'm going to say.
What I'm going to say about the Seahawks, it seems crazy at first to turn this down. Then I looked at the Bears. You know how many draft picks? So the Bears have had at least however many drafts, right? However many picks they've made.
Yep.
Since 1936, have they ever drafted a quarterback even close to Russell Wilson? In 85 years of at least 7 draft picks each year, have they gotten even one quarterback that would even sniff Russell Wilson?
The Bears?
Yeah, the Bears.
Jim McMahon? No.
No.
Rex Grossman? No.
My point is, this just really solidifies just the value of a top 5 quarterback in the NFL or a player in that range. It's almost impossible to find this player. You could give the Bears 3 picks, 4 picks, 5 picks, and say, you know what? I'm going to give you 5 picks over the 5 first-round picks for the next 3 years. Chances are they're not going to draft a player that's as good as Russell Wilson. That's how hard it is to find a good NFL quarterback. So I think the Seahawks are a little crazy, but at the same time, the Seahawks would almost definitely not find another quarterback. Like if you took those 3 picks, they would almost definitely not find another quarterback as good as Russell Wilson. And even if they filled in the other positions, they would still have a gaping hole at the quarterback position. I'm not sure. And this is what I was saying about Deshaun Watson before all this other stuff happened. The chances of you drafting a quarterback of that caliber is almost it's almost like it's so unlikely to happen. So unlikely to happen no matter how many picks you have. For them to get the maximum value or to get what Russell Wilson is worth is almost actually impossible unless you get someone like a Patrick Mahomes back or maybe a Josh Allen back. Like, it's got to be you're getting these 3 picks and you're getting a quarterback.
That's true. And there's a couple things that I'll say to kind of counter that very quickly is that you're right in that the Bears have not come close to drafting a quarterback like Russell Wilson. But in this day and age, quarterback play, it's not as much of a gamble as it used to be. It's not. I mean, there's slated to be probably 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 8 picks this year. And there I shouldn't say there would be. There might be someone waiting around for the Bears in the draft. They have the 20th pick. I mean, they could trade up in that, or it just depends. But I think that it's not quite as much of a gamble as it used to be because kids are being groomed basically from the time they can walk to be quarterbacks. So you don't have that. We see less and less of that crazy, just precipitous drop off. When people go into the NFL, which you're still right. I'm just saying it's less.
Because you were just saying that Baker Mayfield's a marginal quarterback who should be cut by the Browns. So he was.
Well, I said he shouldn't be re-signed to a mega deal. I think that's
which means he should be cut because
if he's not willing to take less, then yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But Russell Wilson, and the problem here is, and the thing you talked about is something that is, I feel like it's hard to quantify, and that you're saying you can't get equal value for a guy like Russell Wilson. Well, you have to. You're going under the assumption that Russell Wilson is going to be playing at 100% of what Russell Wilson can play at. But if he's in a situation a la, just like Deshaun Watson has been, and he just gives up. I mean, look at what James Harden did on the Rockets. James Harden, you can say equal value, but James Harden quit on his team and just kind of mailed it in, was out of shape. Obviously different sport, but the premise is still there. It doesn't matter how talented the guy is. If he doesn't want to play with you, his value isn't what it could be. It's just not. And so you kind of have to take that into it. Now, I don't think Russell Wilson would do that.
Yeah,
I don't think he's that kind of guy. Wilson. But I'm just saying, in certain instances like this, before all this Deshaun Watson craziness, if he sat out or he just went out there and was just throwing up ducks, you can't say that he's worth 4 first-round picks to you anymore because he's hurting your team more than he's helping it. So it's just another aspect to keep in mind when you're talking about dealing quarterbacks at best level.
Here's my question though. But right now, Russell, would you say the Seahawks are a team that should be considered in contention to win a Super Bowl next year?
Sure.
As presently constituted.
Assuming everyone is healthy, yes.
Okay. If you removed Russell Wilson and added 3 first-round picks, which only one of them could have happened this year, I believe. I don't think the Bears have 2 first-round picks this season. So you basically would get 1 first-round pick. Would they be a Super Bowl team, contending team, without Russell Wilson and an extra one?
Not next season.
Not next season. Okay.
Maybe in 2 seasons.
Maybe in 2 seasons, when Tyler Lockett's already basically going to be gone, and DK Metcalf's going to be coming up for a contract renewal, and Bobby Wagner is going to be ready to retire, and Chris Carson, who just got signed to a contract, is going to be done with his deal. Like, the Seahawks are in a win-now mode because of the money they've committed to Russell Wilson and other players on that team. You trade Russell Wilson, you get 3 first-round picks without getting a star quarterback back. You basically have, especially considering that Pete Carroll's 72 years old, you basically say, you know what, we're throwing away the next 2 or 3 years. That's basically what happens. Unless you get lucky.
If you get a quarterback who is competent, you don't need we have this debate all the time. Those first round picks you can use on a wide receiver that isn't Tyler Lockett. You can afford to pay DK Metcalf because your quarterback is on a rookie contract. You can draft a running back. I mean, God, that's the last thing I would worry about is Chris Carson.
Oh yeah,
I mean, please.
Because Devin Singletary was such a great draft pick at running back. Same thing with
Chris
Ronald
Carson
Jones.
wasn't a great running back.
I guess they're so easy to find. There's so many bad running backs in the NFL. But go ahead.
Well, Chris Carson got signed, and he's not that good either. So I don't think replacing Chris Carson's level of running ability is something you'd really have to stress about.
Carson is probably a top 10 running back in the NFL right now, based on his production in the last 3 years.
We'll look into
based
that.
on his return. My point is, yes, you're right. You can find a competent quarterback, possibly. But if you look at the quarterbacks that have been winning Super Bowls in the last few years, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Tom Brady. I guess yet Nick Foles would be the oddball in there, where it's like, okay, he's not a great quarterback. Russell Wilson won a few, I guess was that 2014. But Matt Ryan, no, he didn't win. That's right. They lost to Tom. It's kind of tough because Tom Brady just keeps winning, so it's just like throws it off. You need to be a good quarterback. Like you need to have a good quarterback, most likely to win in the NFL. I don't think that's outlandish to say.
No, it's not. I'm not saying you can get away with a bad quarterback. I think that there's a lot of promise to be had with some of the places with somebody on a rookie deal. That's all. Yeah. But that's a debate for another day. We can table that for now. We're not going to agree. We're never going to agree, and we'll just keep it. We'll take that to social media.
We're gonna have to wait till just some terrible quarterback wins a Super Bowl, and then it'll be like, okay, Lou, you were right the whole time.
Yeah, we'll see. So finally,
terrible quarterbacks, Andy Dalton. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, how you go from trying to get Russell Wilson to it felt like they panicked and we're just like, who are we gonna get? Like Andy Dalton.
Who's available that's better than Andy Dalton? That's my point. You're like, there's no.
I'd rather have Marcus Mariota than Andy Dalton as my.
There is absolutely no way. Marcus Mariota is such a trash. He can't even beat out Derek Carr. Marcus Mariota has been a bust of all busts in the NFL as far as quarterbacks. But even still, I guess they're in the same vicinity.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, I would have rather had than Andy Dalton.
Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who signed Ryan?
He signed with Washington.
Washington football team. Yes, I would rather have Ryan Fitzpatrick than Andy Dalton. But this is what we're talking about here, right? You're like, oh man, like it's like if you said, like, I'm trying to think of like something really bad that you have to choose between, and there's something else really, really bad. It's just Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton, or Marcus Mariota. Those are your options at quarterback right now in the NFL. If you don't have a guy who's already locked in.
Or someone in the draft. I mean,
Or someone in the draft. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, the Chargers went from Tyrod Taylor to Justin Herbert, and look what happened. I mean, they didn't win a lot of games, but look at the trajectory.
They had the number 6 pick. The Bears don't have the number 6 pick.
But they can trade up. I mean, they obviously are willing to give up picks.
For an MVP candidate or for a really good player, not for some guy they don't even know is going to be good. You're getting a proven star.
So you find out what other players would take, what other teams would take a quarterback, and then you take them instead of making dumb decisions. But all right. Finally, this week in sports, less controversial. Patrick Chung of the New England Patriots retires. He opted out last year along with Dante Hightower, Marcus Cannon, Brandon Bolden. Those other guys are all said to be coming back. Chung, I don't know. I mean, is this a big deal for them? They did re-sign Kyle Van Noy, which I thought was pretty interesting and very, very patriotic. Is that what can you say? Patriot-like?
I like patriotic, actually.
So Patriot style, where it's like they take these no-name guys, they make them into something great, they go get paid, they get cut, and then they come back to the Patriots for a lesser deal. So,
Patrick Chung is a good player, not a great player. Quality start of the NFL, obviously a Patriots team leader. I've actually been very intrigued by the Patriots this offseason. I just feel like they've been getting a bunch of like B plus players, C plus players even, and I mean, Kendrick Bourne, it's Hunter Henry, Jonathan Smith. Yeah, these are good players, but not great players, and I'm just very interested to see kind of how it progresses What can they do this season? It's a very interesting strategy that you don't often see.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very un-Belichickian to be spending this money in free agency like a drunken sailor. But yeah, Patrick Chung. I mean, I don't know. He's a good player. He's not a great player. I think I still remember him trying to play cornerback against the Eagles in the Super Bowl because Malcolm Butler wasn't out there and just getting smoked by Alshon Jeffrey and a couple others, which obviously should not be his lasting image because he's done a lot of good things too, but that's just the one time I remember thinking about him the most. But yeah, good luck, Patrick. We'll see you at some point. I'm sure we'll do TV or something in Boston. But all right, we got to take a break. We're going to come back. We have coming up in a little bit, not right away, but at the bottom of the next hour, we're going to our March Madness breakfast cereal brackets. I'm so excited for this. We have some NBA. We have to go around the NBA and kind of talk a little bit of that. But coming up next, we're sticking with the NFL, and there's some free agency madness going on. It's not just basketball. And so we have a lot to get to. We're just going to rapid fire go through everything to keep you abreast of what's been going on in the NFL free agency market. So stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Benchwarmerz Podcast.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers Podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That's still Jose Ortiz, and this is still the Benchwarmers Podcast. So far, so good. Show's been moving right along. Coming up in the next hour, as I teased in the break before the break, we have our breakfast cereal March Madness brackets. We're pitting breakfast cereal against breakfast cereal, and we're going to be going through the first round, 32 cereals, 16 matchups. Next week, we're going to be asking for your votes to kind of whittle it down even further. Stick around for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to be going around the NBA, talking a little highlight, low light, and things like that. Follow us along on the iHeartRadio podcasting app, or we're on social media everywhere, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, the Benchwarmers Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter. We have a website coming in the very near future, thebenchwarmers.com. And you can find us pretty much anywhere you get podcasts at this point. If you're listening, you found us. So good job. So, Jose, we just talked a little bit of kind of an overview of this week in sports. Now we have a lot of NFL free agency to get to, and we decided in our production meeting to just kind of break this down into a game we usually reserve for the regular season called the Extra Point, which is essentially a fun way of just saying one or two sentences per story to kind of synopsize how you feel about things, because we have there's a lot of these. So try to keep it reasonably in check, because we have a tendency to kind of go on tangents and arguments and things like that because we are born for this job. So, all right, I'll run through them. Give me your first take, or I don't know if that's trademarked, your first thought, and we'll see where we go. So first off, this is going to be a twofer. The Giants sign Dory Jackson, cornerback, to 3 years, $39 million. And they also signed, in a bigger deal, Kenny Golladay finally signs and gets 4 years, $72 million with the New York Football Giants.
So for Kenny Golladay, the Giants are obviously trying to find out what they have in the former number 6 overall pick, Daniel Jones, by overpaying Golladay, which I definitely think is an overpay. And as far as the Dory Jackson, it's also feels like an overpay, and I just wonder if the Giants think they're in a win-now position, because that's what the money would say.
Yeah, Dory Jackson, I didn't really understand. I mean, I guess I don't really know enough about him. I guess he's pretty good just looking through his stats. I guess why not? If they think that he's going to be a use. The problem with cornerbacks is that if they're good, their stats aren't good.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the issue with that. So as far as Kenny Golladay, I went back and looked. This just feels like a desperation play a little bit, because in 2020, Kenny Golladay had 338 yards receiving.
He was also hurt the whole year. But
that's my point exactly, and that's the thing. I mean, the year before that he had almost 1,200 yards. The year before that he had 1,000 yards. But he was hurt, and that should factor in. And giving a guy $72 million, I mean, I think it's $40 million guaranteed. So obviously that's the number that counts. But it's still a lofty price to pay for him. And I guess, I mean, Daniel Jones needs weapons. So I guess this is kind of a last-ditch effort to see if Daniel Jones can do something with, between him, Kyle Rudolph, Evan Ingram. They got rid of Golden Tate. They have a good receiving core if you're including tight ends, but
also Sterling Shepard as well. Sterling Shepard,
yeah, I forgot he was still there. That's right. But yeah, we'll see. Speaking of wide receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster signs a 1-year, $8 million deal to remain with the Steelers.
I think this is Juju gambling on himself and hoping to cash in next season when the cap goes back up, and feel like the moves make sense from both sides.
I think it's a good move for the Steelers. I don't think that it was a good move for if all Juju wanted was an $8 million 1-year deal, I think that a team like the Packers could have really used him. Or there's so many teams that would have benefited from the Ravens. Why the Ravens didn't jump in on this to try to get just some kind of help in the wide receiving core just blows my mind. So I think this was a good deal for the Steelers by virtue of keeping it away from some of their main competition.
I also think Juju's just playing for a larger contract next offseason.
You might be right. Sure. Yeah. I think I didn't consider that's definitely a potential, but that seems a little, I don't know, as a skill position player in the NFL, I wouldn't want to be doing things like that, but that's
fair.
I give him credit. That's not
gambling
easy.
On yourself. Gambling on yourself there.
Next up, Kenyon Drake signs a 2-year, $14.5 million deal, $11 million guaranteed with the Las Vegas Raiders. We had a lot to talk about with the Raiders kind of off the air this week.
Oh my gosh.
What are the Raiders doing? That was the question we kept asking ourselves.
I just don't understand what the Raiders are thinking here, other than not wanting to pay Josh Jacobs. That's the only thing I came up with at the end. I was like, well, maybe they're trying not to pay Josh Jacobs in a year or two when it's time to pay him. That's the only thing I can think of.
I mean, they've jettisoned 2 of their offensive linemen. They went from having probably one of the best offensive lines in football to now just being maybe they're middle of the pack. And Josh Jacobs is a great running back. Kenyon Drake looked pretty good last year, but it's really hard to run the ball with no offensive line blocking. And also, by the way, you have Derek Carr, who is okay, but let's not forget who Derek Carr's brother was, and David Carr. And David Carr, when he got sacked 70 times, became a completely irrelevant player because his confidence was shattered to pieces. So you have the blueprint for what happens when a car gets destroyed.
One thing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
that's it. Go ahead.
Also, the one thing I'll just add, and then we can move on. Josh Jacobs, this was his second year in the NFL, and both years he kind of broke down throughout the season, whether it was at the end of the year, in year 1, or just in the middle in different spots in year 2. Perhaps this is just a sign that Josh Jacobs is not a workhorse back.
Yeah, I thought their backup Richard looked pretty good last year in his stead, but yeah, Kenyon Drake is definitely better than Richard was. So maybe it's just going for the 1-2 punch, kind of which seems to be the way. I mean, they're going to need it because there's going to be some tackles in that backfield. Next up, running back. Stick with the running backs. Chris Carson, as we alluded to earlier in the show, signs a 3-year, $24.625 million deal to remain with the Seattle Seahawks.
Well, listen, it's not like it's $13 million a year or something like that. It's a reasonable number for a running back. It's around a little bit over $8 million a year. Makes sense for both sides, I think, especially with the Seahawks not having a first-round draft pick this year. I just think they were just, let's keep it together. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I guess this was fine. I mean, Chris Carson was injured last year. He rushed for 681 yards. I mean, that's not great. by anybody's measurements. So maybe it's the same thinking where we gotta, it's safety in numbers. Where we have the more running backs, because they've had kind of these cluster injuries a couple times with their running backs in Seattle, much like the Eagles have had with wide receivers. It just seems like it's almost like a virus that spreads in the form of an injury. But I guess it's okay. I think that money could have been better spent elsewhere. But I mean, if you want to stay with the idea of continuity being king, then so be it.
Well, I will say this, and not to belabor the point, I do agree that I thought that they were going to let him walk. And I thought that they would just, hey, listen, you drafted Rashad Penny in the first round a couple of years ago. You just drafted DJ Dallas last year. Let Chris Carson walk and see what you have with Rashad Penny. Obviously, they didn't feel comfortable with what they had in their backup running backs. It would have been nice maybe they signed, maybe because you're going to talk about this later on, but the 49ers signed Alex Mack for a 3-year, $14.85 million contract. I think that probably would have been a better way of spending the money for Chris Carson than for the Seahawks. Yeah,
I agree. AJ Green signed with the Arizona Cardinals, 1 year, $8 million, kind of a prove it deal. Do the Seahawks or the Cardinals? Excuse me. Jeez, I'm still in the same division, wrong team.
Yep.
Do the Cardinals get better with AJ Green?
I don't think so. AJ Green saw 104 targets last year and only caught 47 passes for 2 touchdowns. That is atrocious. This feels like a waste of money, and they could have just drafted someone who would approximate AJ Green.
I think that AJ Green is a good addition because assuming Larry Fitzgerald comes back, because it seems like he's on trajectory to try to break Jerry Rice's reception record. AJ Green's going to be maybe the third option. DeAndre Hopkins is clear and far away the number one. You have Larry, who's been there and is kind of he's the over the middle. He became. It's funny that Larry Fitzgerald kind of became Anquan Bolden over the last few years, and now AJ Green in limited usage, I think, can be highly effective. And he's also going to be motivated because he's been floundering away in garbage Cincinnati for his entire career and not known what it's like to be on a quality team that has a chance to really make a deep playoff run. So if there's ever a time where he could show up and be productive, I think it's this year.
I feel like last year when he was on a contract year and everyone thought that he was washed up, and he had a chance to prove that he wasn't washed up, got over 100 targets and did really very little with them. I thought that would have been the time when he would have been motivated to try and get another contract and show that he wasn't done in the NFL.
Maybe. I mean, Joe Burrow was on, his first year in the league, so there might have been some chemistry issues there, but who knows?
That's fair.
Your 49ers, you just brought up Trent Williams, remaining with the 49ers, 6 years, $138 million, making him the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. They also signed, as you mentioned, Alex Mack, 3 years, $14.85 million. How do you feel about your 49ers today?
I love when teams invest in their offensive line, and I love it even more when it's the 49ers. So I love this move, especially, I can go on and on, but especially with a team that wants to run the ball as much as they do. I love the move. I have nothing but glowing remarks for me about this move.
Yeah, you had to keep Trent Williams. You had to keep him, especially with Jimmy Garoppolo is already injury prone. You need to give him all the protection, assuming they bring Jimmy Garoppolo back. But whoever it is, you need to give your quarterback all the protection in the world. And that Kyle Shanahan blocking scheme is based on it's a lot of upfront movement, a lot of rollouts and things like that. So you need big, tough, capable guys up front, and that's a good move. Alex Mack, yeah, I think that's solid. But Jamal Williams signs with Detroit, 2 years, $6 million.
So this is my biggest surprise. I'm surprised the Packers didn't let Aaron Jones walk and sign Williams instead, because he was pretty effective last season when given the opportunity when Aaron Jones was hurt. And you look at Aaron Jones getting around, I think it was like 12 or 13 million a year, and you could have had Jamal Williams for $3 million a year. I don't know if the drop off is that significant from Aaron Jones to Jamal Williams that you wouldn't have just signed Jamal Williams and didn't try to get yourself a wide receiver like a Juju Smith-Schuster or like a Kenny Galladay. So, but listen, Jamal Williams, I'm sure he'll have a nice role in Detroit.
Yeah, and Jamal Williams didn't do too bad. He played 14 games. He had 119 rushes and 505 yards, 2 touchdowns, which, if you extrapolate that out, is not a bad season. But I thought, with drafting A.J. Dillon and then also having Aaron Jones there, 2 out of the 3 I thought, but I did agree with you. I thought Aaron Jones would be the one to walk because he'd be able to command the most money.
Yeah.
And, running backs typically don't get that big contract, these days. So I was surprised by this. I'm also kind of surprised he stayed in division, but maybe that's on purpose.
It's whoever wants to pay him.
Yeah, essentially, I guess so. Phillip Lindsey, speaking of running backs, signed by the Texans, 1 year, $3.25 million.
All I would say is this: the Texans should have a very interesting backfield mix when you have Mark Ingram's there. Obviously, Phillip Lindsey is there, and why am I drawing a blank right now?
On the Texans.
The Texans. David Johnson. David Johnson's there. Right. Much to the chagrin of fantasy football owners everywhere, this will definitely be a very muddled backfield.
Yeah, I think Phillip Lindsey could come out on top of this. He obviously didn't get the Brock Osweiler level deal that going from the Broncos to the Texans and with 1 year, $3.25 million, but he runs hard. I'm curious about why the Broncos let him go, but maybe that's just I don't know. I don't know.
Well, they did just pay Ingram. Not Ingram. Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
So it's
that's
at
true.
some point you gotta pick and choose. It was really questionable to me why they paid Melvin Gordon last year when you had Phillip Lindsey, who's just as effective. So these are the type of decisions that kind of come back to haunt you a year or two later.
Yeah, and the Texans sign yet another C+, B- running back in questionable fashion. So good luck, Texans fans.
It's going to be a rough year.
Yeah.
They need to take a book from the Houston Rockets. We'll be talking about them in show 2 and just, I wasn't in favor of blowing it up before, but now you just may as well blow it up, trade Deshaun Watson while he still has any sort of value left at this point. Just get picks and just lose.
You have to just reset. You got to stop.
Yeah.
Just stop trying to bail water. Just let it sink and start over.
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to do it. That's around the NFL. Extra point. We're going to take a break. We have to come back for hour number 2. Later on in hour number 2, like I keep mentioning, we're doing our breakfast cereal brackets, March Madness style. It's the first round. We're excited. Jose and I are going to be going through and choosing the winners of those games based on our own criteria. After this round, we're going to be asking for your vote. So there's going to be basically a 3-part vote. So there's there's always a tiebreaker in the subsequent rounds. So stick around for that. But coming up next, we're going to talk some NBA. We have to go around the NBA very quickly and kind of give you a status update on all things National Basketball Association. So stick around, and we'll be right back. This is the Benchwarmerz Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmerz Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmerz Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.